Okay, here's the deal, folks. This is really going to be a policy-based discussion. I want to get a sense, for starters, of what each of you brings to the table from background and experience that makes you qualified for this. And I want to know, starting off, what your top 3 issues are. And I'd like you to give me a real quick synopsis in a minute by the top 3 issues. I don't want you to go into expanding on them. I just want to know what they are. And then I will see where the commonalities are, and I may double back as with this discussion, but I want to see what the issues are you consider important. Let's start with you, Matt.
Alrighty. Top 3 issues for me: balanced budget, sustainable retirement programs, and maintain and exceed the expectations of our citizens and taxpayers with the service that they get.
And your qualifications?
Qualifications: I've been on the board since 2009. I've been attending the board meetings since 2004 as a public person, I guess is the best way to describe that. I have a college background, postgraduate work in business management. I'm the CEO of a privately held corporation. I had experience in the corporate world for a Fortune 500 company at the executive level, so I bring business expertise to
What kind of privately held corporation, remind me?
It's a general partnership. We have 2 limited partnerships underneath that. We do business in the agricultural sector.
Okay. Stephen, do you go by Steve or Stephen?
Steve is fine.
Okay, Steve. That'll make my notes easier. Okay.
I have a background in finance. I have spent the last 12 years working as a CFO. I'm a California certified public accountant, but I've not practiced public accounting for probably 25 years. In my position,
so what do you do now?
I'm a chief financial officer, executive vice president of finance is my actual title for a software company. And I spent 10 years as a...
What's the software company?
It's called VPS.
VPS?
Yes.
And what is that?
It does infrastructure software for data centers. And
is that what we use when we want to connect?
It's a parallel processing software solution that resides on the actual CPU or on the other hardware components of the data center, including the memory and the communications.
Okay, I'm trying to think. When we want to connect from outside.
Oh no, that would be someone else.
Okay, it starts with a V. It's a V3.
Yeah, you probably have a VPN.
VPN, thank you. Okay. Okay, so that's not a VPS.
No, that's not a VPS.
Pardon my ignorance. Okay, I was just curious. Okay, go ahead.
And in
VPS,
my role as a
VPN, yeah.
There's a lot of V's in there, and I'm a VP of finance. Anyway, as a financial executive, my role primarily is to work with the chief executive officer of an organization to understand the different components of the business, the operational activities that go on in every area of the business.
And you've been the CFO there for how long?
This role has been for the last couple of years. Before that, 10 years with a company called Certain Software.
You keep dropping you're a quiet talker, and and I've got a feeling.
That's all right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, prior to that, for 10 years, I was the CFO for a software company in San Francisco called Certain.
Certain?
Certain.
Like to be certain?
Absolutely certain.
Okay. Okay.
Pretty catchy.
Okay. And your 3 issues?
Well, first I'd like to say that as a finance executive, my role requires me to work with a chief executive and provide information about the entire organization in terms of what it's going to cost for any particular activity within the business. So, for example, if we go for an annual budget or a 5-year forecast, the CEO tells me the strategy they want to do. They want to be the biggest, the best. They want to take over market share, and this is how I want to do it. I want to open up operations. I want to do this and that. tell me what that means. And I take that information and I analyze it and understanding what everybody in the business is doing, explain in fiscal terms what the ramifications of that are. In other words, is it feasible? This is how much it will cost. This is what the end result will be. It's either going to be a money winner, money loser. This is the risk. This is the reward, that sort of thing. My top 3 issues for joining in the race for director of San Ramon Valley Fire is primarily to address issues which have come to my attention with regard to relationships between management and rank and file. As a long-term citizen of San Ramon, actually Alamo, I've had positive experiences with all the firefighters I've come.
Yeah, I don't want you to expand on them. I just need the checklist.
Okay,
right now.
fine.
Okay.
So one would be to improve relations within the department, make it more functionally efficient. Another would be to address the shortcomings in the fiscal budget and being able to make up the difference there. As you've read, no doubt, there is a budget shortfall.
Fiscal budget, shortcomings.
Right, and third would be to restore a sane and reasonable fiscal approach to future spending.
Okay, Jay?
Okay, I have lived and worked in the San Ramon Valley, the district, for the last 30 years.
By the way, are you still practicing as a vet or not?
Yes.
Okay.
But I work for others now.
Okay.
I'll get to that in a second.
Okay. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So,
Full disclosure, years and years ago, he treated my dog.
years ago, probably the 80s, I'm thinking.
No, it was the
maybe
90s.
Okay.
Yeah.
In any case, I have over 30 years of business experience.
Mm-hmm.
I started practice from scratch, started a second one. Ultimately, they grew to businesses that had over 100 employees. So I know how to run a business. I know how to read a balance sheet, profit loss statements, things like that. I also have a lot of experience serving on boards. I've been past president of my homeowners association, past president of Kiwanis Club, served on that board for many, many years. Also, immediate past president of the California Veterinary Medical Association, so our state association. So I mentioned that because I feel like I have a lot of leadership experience, and I've served on boards. Like I have a lot of experience in reaching consensus and ultimately making decisions on boards.
Your top 3 issues?
Top 3 would be, first of all, I'd say the district has outstanding services. I'd like to see that maintained, but unfortunately they've got to balance the budget. What they're doing is unsustainable, since most of the budget is...
Okay, just the topics, okay? So balanced budget.
Right, and I guess that would have to come pension reform, benefit reform.
Okay, and what's your third?
I think that they can do a better job of maintaining facilities and equipment without incurring more debts.
Okay. And the man in the phone, Gordon, you're on.
All right. Qualifications, 35 years in the fire service and various positions, both administrative and line.
Who do you currently work for?
Currently I work for the Alameda County Fire Department.
Is that where you've always worked?
No.
Where have you worked in the past?
I spent 29 and a half years working for the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratories Fire Department, where I was served in various capacities, including battalion chief. I did things like write a hazardous materials plan for the fire department there. I managed that part of the department.
So did you work with Randy Bradley?
I'm sorry?
Did you work with Randy Bradley?
Yeah, do you know Randy Bradley?
Well, he's in Ragarinda now. Where did you work with him? Alameda County?
I was a captain when he started here as a firefighter, and I worked here when he left to work for Ragarinda.
Okay. I was just curious.
Yep. I spent 2 terms as president of the Contra Costa County Fire Commissioners Association.
President of the Contra Costa
County Fire Commissioners Association. It's an organization that includes all the camaraderie of fire and their fire board members and Contra Costa County.
Where were you a fire commissioner?
Well, a fire commissioner basically is a board member.
Okay, that's right. That's right. Because when you from your past service, right? Okay, when you're from your past service on the San Ramon Valley Board, is what you're saying.
I served on the San Ramon Valley Fire Board for 6 years. Was the president at one time on that board as well as vice president. I was appointed to a position on the local emergency planning commission for the state of California to represent, at that time it was Region 2 of the local emergency planning commission. It's a branch of the OES. It represented 16 counties from Del Norte, the top of the Oregon-California border, down to the San Benito County. My position on that was to represent all fire departments in those 16 counties, to review hazardous materials response capabilities of all the fire departments in those counties, and make training and equipment grant decisions with taxpayer money to make sure that hazardous materials issues could be addressed for those communities.
So, what are your 3 issues, Gordon?
Public administration from University of California.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Am I speaking too fast? Or?
No, well, I cut you off, so I missed you.
Okay. You had a question about that?
Your public administration, I didn't catch what that was.
Public administration is like business administration,
I know.
except for it's for public agencies, such as fire departments, where...
Gordon, I get that. I'm trying to understand what your degree was in and where it was from.
Oh, it's from the University of California, public administration.
When was it, and which UC campus?
Well, I attended several campuses. I attended classes in San Francisco, at the University of San Francisco campus. I also attended various classes at off-site campuses. Comes to mind in Sacramento and some other places. I mean, this was some time ago, early 90s.
Gordon, my question is, you say, if I understood you correctly, you said you had a public administration degree from UC?
The University of San Francisco, not UC.
University of San Francisco. Okay, thank you. That's where I was having a hard time. That's why I wasn't registering. Okay, and it's a master's degree or what?
I've got a bachelor's degree.
Bachelor's degree, okay.
I've had follow-up work. I'm a graduate of Leadership San Ramon. I've got a certificate of completion of Special District Management, Finance, and Administration. So I've done other work that's related.
Okay. So give me your 3 issues.
I've taught for Los Angeles and Chabot colleges for 20 years, and I've run fire academies and what have you.
Gordon, give me your 3 issues.
3 issues. Accountability. Number 2, returning fiscal responsibility to the district. And 3, ensuring that the services that the district provides are those that are expected by the community.
Okay, so let's start with you, Gordon. Give me your quick assessment of how you see the district budget at this point.
Well, I think that the San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District is unique in the sense that it's a independent special district. So the way that the funds arrive at the fire district are somewhat unique, other than most other fire departments don't enjoy the type of funding that Ramon Valley Fire has. Of course, like all public agencies, they're affected by the economy.
Gordon, let me be more specific. Give me your assessment of the fiscal health of the district.
Well, never was it running in a deficit while I was standing on the board, but it currently is. So that's an issue. I don't know who dropped the ball, but I guess the buck stops at the top, doesn't it? Until I open up the books and look at them, I can't. I'm giving you my assessment, but it's not educated with the facts that I would gain from a complete audit. But that's in order. I think the district needs to be audited and find out what happened, who dropped the ball. So, does that answer your question?
Okay.
I think that the issues facing the district are the same that face everybody in this day and age with the economy the way it is. But when I sat on the board, I was able to see a crisis coming and prepare the district to absorb the .com crisis and was saving the district $1.2 million a year before that crisis hit, and we weathered that just fine.
Okay, so Gordon, let me ask you a couple questions. What do you think is driving the cost? What are the key problems that are driving costs in the district right now?
Well, I don't know how much you understand about public agencies, but just to give you a general sense, the number one cost for any agency is the cost of labor. That's the biggest driver. The way to save in a public agency is you have to look at wages and salaries first. But there's other things. I mean, there could be expenditures that are unnecessary. They could also be wasting money. For instance, the district could be purchasing vehicles instead of leasing them. They used to purchase them, but when I sat on the board, I had an analysis done of the cost of buying new vehicles versus 3-year leases, and was able to save a lot of money there. But those are the types of things that cost money.
Okay. Let me move on, then we'll come back. Okay. Jay, you want to give me your assessment of the district budget?
Well, first of all, I think the district is very well funded. I mean, it's excellent tax base, but the fact is they've run a deficit for the last 3 years and project another deficit this year. And that's without their OPB. They've got a line item as a zero, where in fact it cost them over $4 million last year. And it does include a lot of unmet pension liabilities as well. So they've got a lot of issues with the financial picture right now. And as pointed out, the majority of the expenses are payroll. In fact, more than 90% are payroll related. So that's where the fix has got to come. It's either that or you cut services. Nobody wants to close stations or cut services. We don't want to raise taxes, so we've got to work on trying to cut expenses. And again, I think payroll is where that's got to start.
And what do you see in that as the problem there is?
Well, pension and benefits. Pension right now makes up 25% of the general fund went to pensions last year.
Can I speak to that issue?
You will in your turn, Gordon.
Okay. I'd like to address that a little more detail when you get a chance.
You will get your chance.
Thank you.
And I've taken that right out of the chief's letter to the board last summer. So I mean that's one of the largest expenses, and medical benefits is another one. I think it's an area where there's a lot of savings that could be had. I also agree with him. I would look at other ways to finance, not finance, but we should be setting aside funds to maintain equipment and facilities, not have to go out and borrow money to buy or fix things. Right now, I think all the money is going to personnel costs, so they've got to go out and borrow money to do the things that should come out of the general fund, in my opinion.
Steve,
Yes.
your assessment.
I understand that the district is currently running at a $2 million per year deficit. I don't have information directly from the district about where their money is spent. However, I would refute the 90% figure based on some public information that is available, due in large part to the hard work that you and your editorial staff, investigative reporting, has been able to free up for public people, such as myself, the public, to be able to look at. In short, I looked at the 2011 total cost of employee spending, and it's broken out by employee salaries, base, paid sick, medical, dental, employer contribution to pensions, miscellaneous, and the total cost. I came up with a number. If you use this year's, I didn't have 2012's 2011 spending, but if you have this year's spending projected to be $58 million, 73% going to employee costs, which leaves 26% to be spent on discretionary items, I suppose, including fire trucks maintenance, training, hiring new employees, and all other sorts of expenses, which breaks down to $1,290,000 a month. So, in short, I would have to say that my approach to budgets is to, ask a lot of questions, question everything, get answers, verify those answers, get to the root of the problem, find out exactly, the numbers don't lie, make predictable, or rather reliable financial forecasts and budgets based on fiscal information that inevitably is going to be based on what if scenarios, for example.
Do you agree with what Jay said, 25% general fund went to pensions?
I believe that I read that 25% of the spending went to pensions, and when I looked at the line items, the total for employer contribution to pension funds, in fact, it came to 27% of this year's funds. But that is not to say, as I would have believed from reading it in the paper, that 27% of the money coming out of the general fund is being spent on current retirees. That is the contribution being made on behalf of current employees.
I don't think anybody said it would go to current retirees. Has anybody?
Well, that has come up quite often, how the shortcome in the pension liability versus the obligation has to come out of current spending. Would be my main concern. I don't want to spend current money.
No. Wait a minute. Whoa.
So I have...
Well, time out. My question to you is, does 25% of the general fund spending go to pensions?
It goes to employer contributions to employee pension accounts.
Yes.
That is correct. So
Okay.
of the employee's total compensation,
so you agree with that?
75% is for their current pay and employee medical benefits, and 25% of their total pay is for pension benefits. In business, the way I look at total cost of employees is what I'm spending for their pension contributions.
25% of the pay is 25% of the general fund.
Well, right, 75% of the general fund goes to total employee comp. Of that, 25% of the total goes to employer contributions to pensions. Here's the point. If you have an employee and you have expenses associated with that employee, they would include wages, employee benefits, including medical, dental, and vision. They would include sick time. They would include the total cost of the employee includes all those expenses.
I'm very familiar with this.
Included.
I'm sure, since you've read our stuff, we're very familiar.
Actually. And
Good.
I recognize also that the employer pays those payments either directly to the employee or on behalf of the employee. Correct?
I'm sorry.
They pay the total cost of the employee either directly to the employee or on behalf of the employee.
The total cost of what? Pensions?
Of each employee's annual package.
Well, yes, some of it goes to the employee and some of it
Goes to medical, dental premiums. Some of it would go to the employee in the form of sick pay or vacation pay, and some of it would go to the employee's pension account.
Yeah. So let me ask
So
you.
that's part of the cost of having an employee. Just as with a business that operates for profit, you would not just include the employee's salary as the cost of that employee. You would include the total cost for that employee,
Sure.
paid for on behalf and directly to that employee. So
Okay, so
I would say yes, it's true that 25%.
So do you see the pension cost as a problem?
Well, in terms of determining what the problem is, I would really want to see a breakout of the spending for the entire department and evaluate each line item on the merits. In this case, pensions as a part of total employee compensation could in fact be something that I look at, as well as wages, as well as sick and medical, dental, and vision payments. They're all part of the employee cost. So if an employee chooses to, for example, not forego a pay raise and have maybe half of that pay raise be included as part of their pension benefit, contribution to the benefit plan, then they are in fact taking a cut in pay, even though the cost of the retirement plan is increasing. So you get that. You seem to have.
Oh no, I mean.
You're smiling.
I'm
okay,
waiting for you to answer the question.
Okay, so of the total
Is
cost.
it a problem or isn't it a problem?
Well, the problem, as I see it, is not with the current contributions to employees' pension plans, but rather with the assumptions that the actuaries made with regard to the returns on the pension that would be required in order to meet the defined benefits that were promised to the employees in the plan. In industry 20 years ago, I had a defined benefit plan. I worked for a large telecommunication company. They recognized that it was impossible to determine what their liability would be for that plan after 30 years.
You take issue with the return rate assumption?
With the return rate assumption, I don't take issue with that as much as I believe it's a separate issue than the current contributions to employee pensions.
You think the return rate assumption is a different issue than the current contribution rates?
Well, based on some work that you've done that I found to be very good, the pension liability is underfunded for much of CalPERS as well as many other public pension funds in California. Is that true? Underfunded liabilities, based on assumptions that there would be returns in the stock market as much as 17-20%.
I don't think anybody's talked on assumptions of 17 to 20%.
Well, when Governor Gray Davis approved changes to pension plans, they were based on assumptions that the investments that the pension plan were making would increase annually by an assumed amount, so that the liability for the pension of all the employees working would be enough to cover the money donated to or contributed to the pension plan would be enough to cover the liability of all the employees retiring.
That's absolutely true.
And there's not enough money in it.
That's absolutely true. So
and where's that money got to come from?
So my question to you is, do you take issue then with the assumption, right? The assumption that goes into the calculation that led to that?
Bottom line, I take issue with paying current retirees out of current funds, paying for that shortfall, basically.
You take issue with
underfunded pension liabilities being paid for with current budget resources.
How would you pay for it?
Well, we can't very well go back and take away what we've already given to people. So I agree with the governor and the bill that he just signed that there have to be changes made to.
No, but how would you pay for that unfunded liability?
We have no choice but to pay for it out of the general fund.
Okay, but you just said I take issue with the underfunded pension liabilities coming from current budget resources.
I believe those are your words.
I believe I just took notes of what you said. Maybe I got it wrong, but if you'd like to rephrase it, you're welcome to.
Well, I'm happy to rephrase my issue with several issues that are currently statewide, not just this district.
Well, I'm asking about this district right now.
They have a Current budget deficit of $2 million a year, apparently. I take issue with it. Where that money is being spent is something that I have to be able to have access to information to be able to ascertain. So if it's because the total cost of current employees is too high, which is made up of several different components, then you can't just talk about reducing one component and not the other. You have to look at the entire package. One thing you can't do is you can't take away something you've already given someone. But you can, in the future, address anything that is still to be earned.
Let's let Matt have his turn, and then we'll come back and talk about possible solutions.
Okay, well, the short answer is yes, there's some trouble with the budget, and the economic outlook is not real positive at this time. A couple things. You can go to our website and pull up all the financial information you care to. All the public records are there, so if you want budget information, it's certainly available to everybody. We're very transparent. To get to the basics here, 2010, 2011, we had deficits. 2012, with the unaudited numbers, it appears that the operating income somewhat matched the operating expenses. It was real close. But what saved the day, the reason why we didn't spend a bunch of the reserve money in 2012 is because we had grants that we received, and we had offsetting income that comes in one at a time, or one-time income, if you will, that covered some of the expenses that we had. So we kind of have a gift for 2012. Going forward, the budget for 2013, the year we're currently in, we're predicting, if all things remain equal, about a $3 million deficit spending. And the financial cliff has been moved out a little bit, but probably about 2014 or 15 will be below the required reserves if we maintain the spending levels in relationship to the income levels that we have. So that's 2013-14,
what are you saying happens? What is the financial cliff, as you say?
The financial cliff would be is where the reserves are below the amount stipulated by the district. So we would be close to the point where we would be spending past the reserves that are dedicated to be reserves, and we would be approaching the financial calamity of having very little income in relationship to the expense levels that we'd be spending.
Okay, so let me ask you the same question I asked the others.
Yeah.
Are pensions part of the problem?
Yeah, that's a good point, and we'll go back to the numbers we were just discussing. If you take the operating income nowadays for the 2013 budget, about 90% goes back to the employee. You run the district off of about 10% or less. So to answer your first question, I think is important to think about. You can go in and cut the operating expenses 10%, but you're cutting 10% of 10%. If you're going to deal with making some changes that are going to make some realistic long-term financial benefits to the district, you got to work on that 90%, which has been identified by the previous candidates as income that's derived for the employees, whether it be pension reform and their current expenses.
So you have to deal with total compensation on the 90%.
That's correct. If you're going to save some money to make a difference, it's that 90% that you have to deal with. So I think that pension reform is real important. I think it has to be sustainable. I agree that you can't just take everything away from the employees. You have a good team. You can't not reward them for that. But you have to do it at levels that are acceptable to the taxpayers and to the general public that we serve, and somewhat relatable to the rest of the industry.
Okay, let's talk about some solutions and such. But before we do that, Gordon, you wanted to chime in on pensions.
Yes, I did. Some of the things I was going to point out have been covered. I don't know what your background or what you know about unfunded liabilities. I'm assuming you know something about that. This is the points that I think are important to remember on this. Just like our my personal 401k is invested in the stock market rises and falls. The pension monies that are invested in the pension for the San Ramon Valley firefighters, it's in the county retirement fund. That money is invested. It's invested in the same vehicles that your 401k and mine are invested in. And just like our 401k, they rotate and fall with the economy. And if we take a snapshot, such as what they call an actuarial, in a year where it's down, and if you pick that out, you get low numbers in the future and a bad fiscal outlook. If you take a snapshot on a fat year with interest rates and the earnings are up, you get, and you project that out over the lifetimes of the participants, you get a good outlook. That's how we end up with problems, because we're taking snapshots. So what's taking place here is we've had a downturn in the economy for about 4 years. So the fiscal outlook of that unfunded liability looks short. In time, like everything else, is cyclic. However, the responsibility of making sure that the district finances are sound lies with the board, the district board. And the board reacts on recommendations that come from the manager. The fire chief is the manager. So the manager goes to the board and makes recommendations, and the board puts together a subcommittee, a budget subcommittee. There's other subcommittees on personnel, what have you. But that subcommittee is going to vote on and adopt a budget. And there are ways to work with budgets. In fact,
okay, Gordon, let me ask you something. Your district has an unfunded liability. I believe it's probably a funded ratio somewhere in the vicinity of 70% right now. I'd have to check the exact Cicera numbers. It may be about 75, depending on whether or not you use market value of assets or actuarial value of assets, which I'm sure you're familiar with the difference. So are you suggesting that you're going to be able to grow your way out of this with market returns?
No. In fact, I'm the wrong person to ask on this particular, because I have not sat on the board for a half a dozen years. But Matt Stamey, who's a current board member, he's there today. He would be able to tell you how they came in short and how this wasn't, managed.
I'm not asking for the budget shortfall. I'm asking about the unfunded liability on the pension plan. My question to you is, are you going to be, your implication when you talked about the unfunded liability a second ago on pensions was that it was just simply a fluctuation in the market. And so my question to you was very simple. Are you suggesting then that you're going to be able to grow your way out of this problem with market returns?
No, not only with market returns.
Okay.
Would you like me to get into detail? I think that the firefighter's going to have to make concessions. The firefighters are going to have to do without. The firefighters are going to have to pay into the benefit that they receive. And it's my understanding, and that's what I wanted you to ask Matt Senior right there, if indeed those negotiations are currently taking place, and if indeed the firefighters haven't said that they would take pay freezes for 7 years and cuts. This is my understanding. I don't know this to be true because I don't follow it that closely, but I know enough to know what I'm into and why I'm getting into it. It's my understanding that the firefighters themselves, people that are dedicated their life to be in public service, have to ask for and put themselves out there for the cuts that are being necessary to sustain it. That, in conjunction with market upturns, will sustain the retirement fund.
Gordon, let me ask you a question then.
The board has not adopted any of these proposals.
Gordon, let me ask you a question then, and we'll start with you with this question. Currently, the district pays about 73% of payroll in contributions to the pension system. Does that sound about right to you?
That's the number I used to come up. Actually, I had 72, but that's close enough.
Okay. Currently, the employees pay somewhere between net about 6 and 9%, maybe 10. Does that sound about right?
That's the numbers I remember.
So what would you say has to be done on that?
Now, you're asking for me to give you, standing here with a cell phone to my ear, an answer to something that's more complex and can be given like that. But I would say that the employees need to reach into their pockets and their salaries and dig out more to cover these costs. Yes. And other things need to take place as well. For instance, your paper, and I've read the articles, they lambast firefighters for making $200,000, but what you never tell the people that the firefighters that make $200,000 a year work 3/4 of every waking moment for the fire department and get overtime. And I will tell you this, overtime is paid at a rate of 1.5 times the net normal salary. This is a law. You have to pay 1.5. But you don't have to pay those additional benefits that you've already paid for the full-time employee. So you're saving 0.23%. In other words, 23% of benefits not being paid to the person you're paying overtime to. So if you don't hire full-time employees but use your workforce and pay them overtime, you will save the district money. But when you do that, what happens is you get the occasional firefighter that's single or just has decided that he wants to give up to buy a house in a very affluent community where houses are expensive and will work virtually every single day that he can and make enough money to acquire whatever goal they have, but at the same time it saves the district money. But then you come out with articles every year stating how much this person's overpaid, and that's not really the truth. They have a base salary, but if they just went to work the days that they were obligated to go, you wouldn't be able to have that sensational article. Now, I'm not trying to indict you as a paper. I've always thought it was just you didn't understand all the components there, and the district's attempts to try to cut costs by hiring back their own employees and paying them overtime versus new employees with additional benefits.
So, Gordon, my question to you is, you know, the firefighters are going to have to dig in more, you said, into their pockets. Give me some sense of the scale.
Well, the scale is going to be dictated when a complete assessment of the financial condition of the organization is looked at, and this is all taking place now. This is going to be probably done before this election's over, so that this issue, unless they can't decide on a budget, is going to be decided before this election's over. My job, when I get in there, is to make sure that people are doing the right thing by the citizens.
Why do you think this issue is going to be decided before?
Let's make sure that nobody's in there with an ulterior motive, nobody has some conflict of interest, that there's no impropriety or even the appearance of impropriety taking place, and that we have accountability and fiscal responsibility. And my concerns right now are that some of that is not taking place because this district has been blessed the way that it gets its funds, and to end up with a budget deficit is inconceivable to me, and we understand the components to go into that, but we also know that there's steps that could have been taken to prevent that from happening. And so I lay that at the people that are up in the helm right now.
Okay. Jay, you want to address the pension cost question?
Well, can I answer your question? No, because I'm gonna make a statement, and you're gonna try to play gotcha with a bad quote. It doesn't work for me. Look, let's be honest here. Let's try to do the right thing by the citizens. Okay, that's why I'm running for this. I want the right thing to happen. Okay, and I don't mean adversarial, but please, you know, I'm getting the sense that you're steering this book down one direction. There was an article run by the Times the other day about something about family ties of some of the candidates, and you know, that's a red herring. That has nothing to do with doing the right thing.
Why is that a red herring?
That's a red herring because it has no bearing on the district doing the right thing by the citizens and taking their tax dollars and making sure that they're getting the services that they're paying for. This district right now has not had any succession planning taking place. They're currently looking for a chief. The chief's already retired. We have a chief, a manager of district for $1 a month. Would you work for $1 a month right now, Dan? There's no way. So what's going on there? I don't know what's going on there, but that sure smells to me. And I'm going to tell you something else. There's a lot of different...
Gordon, we got to give other people a chance.
Okay.
Jay.
I'm sorry.
I asked you about the split in employer costs on pensions and what you think needs to be done.
Well, I would agree with the figures. And by the way, I found the district to be very transparent in their financial information. I mean, I went down and just asked for these and I got them. The annual budget, the annual financial report. Actually, they're online. You don't even have to go down there. I would agree with him. The employees have got to get something back. The exact percentage, honestly, Dan, I don't know the actuarial studies, but it's my understanding that if they would just go with what surrounding districts have done, in other words, take, for example, Pleasanton and Livermore, that it would solve a lot of the problems.
Do you want to give some scale to it?
Scale, as in percentages?
Yeah.
No.
Steve?
Your question is to me, how much should the pensions be cut?
No, I didn't say how much should pensions be cut. I said...
Oh, because that's what I hear from you. Anyway, what I would do as part of the board would be to evaluate spending and receipts so that they match more closely with each other, regardless of underfunded liabilities, which I do feel strongly about and feel as though you've done good work on.
I'm sorry, you dropped your voice.
Underfunded liabilities.
Yeah.
I think you've done good work on that, to bring that to the public's attention. The best way to address that is going forward, because the longer it goes on, the bigger the problem becomes, just as with Social Security.
So how would you address that?
Well, unfortunately, unfunded liabilities are a result of things that have happened in the past, and fixing them going forward would probably require an act of the legislature. I believe the courts have already determined that it's not possible to touch benefits that have already been earned, either in private industry or by public employees. But to your question is...
Well, let me ask you, would you suggest that future accruals of current employees should be touched?
Future accruals of current employees represent the contribution that the district is making on behalf of employees as part of their compensation package.
No, you said...
And there are actuarial tables that tell the district if that's enough money to pay for the benefits that those employees will be promised.
No, that's not the question. You said that past earned benefits should not be touched.
Well, I didn't say they shouldn't. I said it's not legally possible. The courts have said. Yes. Right,
okay.
Right.
One of the legal questions hanging out there still is whether future accruals for current employees are sacrosanct.
Well,
so
I'm not an attorney and I
don't
work for the Assembly or the Senate, but I would have to believe that for future employees you should be able to...
Not for future, for current employees. That was the question. Future accruals for current employees.
Well, I'll tell you, in private industry, that's not how it works. You're given a letter that says we're changing from a defined benefit to a defined contribution plan, and that's it. Everything you've earned to date, you've earned. Whether or not there's a legal precedent for that and for public employees, I couldn't say. I would have to believe that the public sector, the public employee sector, which seems to follow the private sector by about 20 years, is and will probably be adjusted as a result of the system being unable to sustain itself. I mean, it'll collapse under its own weight, and people won't be receiving checks because there will be no money to pay those checks. All the funds that are for the current expenses will be going to pay for past employees.
So coming back.
But that's a separate issue from the budget, and as I said,
it's also a separate issue from the original question on the table, which was when I gave you the breakdown of employer and employee rates. My question to each of you has been, what would you do? Should the
employees pay more?
Should the employees pay more, and if so, how much?
Well, if you could agree with the employees that they would contribute more towards their pension plan, what would they get out of it? So it's a matter of negotiation. I would believe that there is some room for negotiation given the fact that there is a current deficit of $2 million a year, $3 million in the coming year, and that employees as stakeholders in the future of the department would reasonably expect to have to negotiate some additional payments towards their retirement accounts. How much that is and what the numbers look like, I pulled numbers off the web. Apparently everybody else has better numbers than me. I haven't spent a lot of time on this yet, I have to admit. But the numbers I got from the San Jose Mercury News, the sister paper of the Bay Area News Group, apparently are misleading. But at any rate, I would say that if there is a 90% cost to the district for employee-related expenses, I would look to a breakdown of what exactly those expenses were, and of course I would negotiate with employees if it were within my purview, I would negotiate with employees to either increase the amount they contribute to their pension plan or have lower benefits in terms of vision, medical, dental, or pay or some other concession so that the system can sustain itself. I mean, that's the only way it's going to make it. On the other hand, if it is 90% and my numbers are incorrect, or my numbers are correct, then there's money being spent on employees in other places other than salaries, medical, dental, vision, and overtime and pensions. So those expenses are also on the table. I don't know if they go directly into the pocket of the employees. Is there travel that employees are making for seminars and trips and continuing education, for training that's being included with that cost of employees? I would suspect so. Is there maybe an allocation being made for some component of their overnight stays, meals, things like that? I would say that those are probably all items on the table that could be looked at. And if that's the case, I'm not sure that employees wouldn't be willing to forego some of those benefits and maybe keep some of the compensation benefits. It's subject to negotiation, and I can't say without actually sitting down and hearing all sides of the issue.
Your numbers are right. So in the safety section, the firefighters, 71 to 75% is the correct number. It depends on when the firefighter was hired and their age and et cetera. But that's a good number. Of that 75%, about 8 to 12% is the portion of the employee contribution that's being paid by the district itself. The employee, the pickup. Currently, the employee pays the COLA only. In the non-safety issue, it's about 41 to 45%, and I'd say between 4 and 8% is the pickup that's being paid by the district. So fundamentally, I agree with your numbers.
So what should happen?
I think that in order to make the district more financially secure, we need to address those issues. The employee, I think, should be responsible for paying the employee portion of the expenses for retirement, etc. I think that's a
well, that would get you to somewhere between 13 and 20, if I'm correct. Is that correct?
Give or take, yeah.
Okay. And,
that's right, 12 point something.
That would bring down the employer's share to 63, roughly,
give or take,
give
maybe
or take,
a little less. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think the other opportunity to have a discussion and certainly negotiations are in a closed session. I don't have the opportunity to answer Gordon's questions on where we are and what we've offered and what they've offered and et cetera. But I think another issue that's a public conversation is the cost of health care.
Okay. We're going to come to that.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, let me start, since I'm trying to go back and forth and keep my notes straight here. Let me give you all. Can you hear me, Gordon? Gordon?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I want to give you all my take on the finances of the district, and then I'd like you react to it globally, the big picture, as to what you see as the solutions and where you see the problems. Pensions alone actually turns out account for about 28% when you account for the employee pickup. of the entire general fund budget. The pension plan is underfunded, as is retiree health, so that the total unfunded liability is about $150 million. Plus or minus, rough ballpark, what, 3 years general fund? Right?
That's correct.
Okay. Little money is being set aside to replace equipment and buildings and maintain them. There hasn't been a contract, and everybody, the firefighters have been out of contract for nearly 2 years. Starting with you, Matt. And I think I forgot one other little key thing in all of this, and that would be employee health care costs, aside from, and I forget what the numbers exactly are on that. Pardon me, because I've been dealing, oh, that's right. I believe the district pays 100% of medical. Am I correct on that? I'm trying to remember whether I'm confusing you guys with Central Sam.
Here, Chairman's plan.
No, that's correct.
What changes should be made?
Well, I think we'll start with healthcare, since that's what you ended with. Healthcare, I think, as Jay just said, is a very generous plan. I think that the opportunity to reduce the number of plans available that still are very generous in terms of their benefits to the employees is available. That opportunity is there. We have some Cadillac plans that I think are going to be a problem for the employee, because under the new Obama administration, they're going to be taxed as a over-the-top medical program. So it's a double jeopardy for the employee. We've done some research on it, and some of the more moderately priced plans are equal to or better.
Okay, so in shorthand,
Shorthand,
fewer, cheaper plans.
We have fewer, cheaper plans that have the coverage that meet and exceed some of the more expensive plans.
Okay.
So
should employees be paying towards that?
I think that the employees should be paying some of it, but you know what? There's, as has been discussed before, that's a negotiated issue. If we can get the employees to look at that as a part of the negotiating process, I think that that would be a benefit to the taxpayers. Absolutely.
Okay. Part two.
Part two. We talked about the unfunded liability. I agree with you on OPEB. We're about $79 million away from making that a self-sustaining trust fund. And
I believe you're making some payments towards your, I'm trying to remember.
OPEB is zero.
Oh no, yeah, that's right. You were doing only pay-go, right?
That's right. We're pay-go.
Yeah.
Correct. And that's a problem. We need to generate some excess funds that we're not living hand to mouth on, so that we can put some funding back into OPEB. Because I think it's in the current employees' benefit to do that. So 20 years from now, we have some money to pay. And as far as the unfunded pension liability issue is concerned, I agree with the process of let's make these cuts that are not draconian, but give the opportunity to the district to kind of get their head above the water, i.e. let the employees pay the employees' share. That would be a good start to getting back to fiscal responsibility.
Okay, what's next?
I
think you may have hit the list.
I think everything is
Okay.
covered there. I agree with the 28%. It's a fundamental issue. You have $5 of revenue and you have $7 of expenses. Something's got to give.
Okay, let me run these down with you, Steve. Okay, healthcare.
With regard to healthcare, again, public employees following the path of private enterprise. I believe that as an incentive to employees to make the most of their healthcare plan, there should be some participation by them in the form of copay. What this does is it allows them to choose a plan that fits their circumstances most closely, and if they want for example, smaller copay, they will elect a higher deductible plan, something that younger employees would probably prefer. If they're older employees, they would want better coverage and maybe opt for a higher copay. The incentive there is for employees to pick plans that are going to end up being most economical for the district.
On retiree health, does the pay-go payment bother you?
It does. With the rising cost of health care, although within the last couple of years not as dramatic, I've noticed that the cost of health care has increased dramatically. Obamacare is a wild card in all this. Whether or not that does in fact create competition in the marketplace, whether it does end up bringing down costs because more participants mean more payers and there's less of a write-off for providers to cover with the cost of higher premiums for their other participants. It's very difficult to say, but I do believe that that is something that's going to, again, like the underfunded pension liability, come back to hurt us in a big way.
Why does pay-go bother you?
Well, because with the increasing cost of healthcare, there's a very difficult process of putting enough aside to pay for what you expect your future liability to be, and the tendency there is, I believe, human nature. The tendency is to assume the best and expect the best.
Okay, maybe we have a definitional problem. Define what you mean by
pay as you go.
Yeah.
It's you just pay as the bills come in.
Okay, and what is the problems you see with that?
Well, because you have a certain amount that you're spending, a percentage of your revenues that you're spending on health care based on current health care cost. As health care costs increase, you still have the same number of employees to cover, but you have a larger expense. So the expense grows, but the base doesn't.
That's the only problem you see with it?
Well, it's going to create a larger portion of your general fund going toward health care. Not too long in the future if things continue the way they do.
Pension, should employees, we've sort of gone over this, but the unfunded liability, does that concern you? Pension unfunded liability?
Yes, it does concern me.
What should be done about it?
Well, there is the Matt Dakin comment that the market has been slumping since 2008 when the stock market, real estate market collapsed. Which was an aberration in the long history of the markets. So there will be some component of market gains that do bail out part of the problem. Based on your numbers, I don't believe that's going to be nearly enough. There will be some component of market gains that offset some of the shortfall. For the last 100 years in the stock market, the trend has been up. If that continues, albeit it's been on a 10-year roll where it really hasn't moved anywhere. It was at 13,000 on the Dow in 2000. It's 13,000 on the Dow in 2012. That sort of stock market performance is indicative of a long-term bear market, but they're often followed by bull markets. I remember in the 80s when the Japanese were going to take over the world, they were buying Rockefeller Center. They were going to be bigger and badder than all the United States. Now it's China. But in turn, the United States did grow out of that, and they will have some element of stock market returns. At least that's my expectation. With regard to the additional amounts that will be required to fund those liabilities, obviously it's going to have to come either from the stakeholders, the taxpayers, or from the employees. And again, that's a negotiation issue. If you see yourself digging in your heels and not giving any leeway on that as an employee, you know that sometime down the line it's going to come back to haunt you. So, I mean, you're just delaying the inevitable as an employee to resist that. So that will be one component. Of course, there's other ways for them to pay into the system, whether it be through foregoing salary raises, or increasing the amount they pay towards their pension plans, or whether it be this medical dental copay, something that I would expect that all employees would push back on, but realistically, it's not something that they can really survive doing. I mean, there's going to be a point where it's unsustainable. And, you know, even if the real estate market turns around, there's been big gains since the last year, and the general fund goes up. I believe that the tendency of districts is to take that new money and spend it on new spending. I don't believe that that's responsible. If there is more funding that comes through a revived real estate market, if, you know, the assessor decides to go back to all those homes that they assessed at lower values for last year's property taxes and increases them by 25% this year, and gets more funds from increases in real estate prices, that money may in part be part of the solution. It's something that the district will have to look at very closely, and if the employees see that they're getting a little, giving a little, if there's give and take, it's not all you give everything, we give nothing, then I think you'll be more successful. That's why negotiations tend to work the win-win scenario really does.
Jay, healthcare.
Okay, I think the district offers very generous plans that private industry for the most part did away with years ago because they were unaffordable. I think the district should offer basic coverage to every employee, and if they want more than that, then they can kick in and pay for it. That's an option.
Should the employees share in that basic coverage?
The basic coverage, I think the district can afford. But you know, we're talking, and as he has already mentioned, you can adjust co-pays, you can adjust deductibles, but there's, you know, you should have a few basic plans, that the district would pay for.
Okay. Retiree health care, then funded liability, and I believe I asked about PAYGO in particular. And does PAYGO, you know, what your reaction is? The district making a
still with health care, the
retiree
post-employment
healthcare,
benefits.
Post-employment benefits.
I mean, that liability went up $4 million last year. That can't continue, obviously. And it's my understanding that if we renegotiate medical coverage for current employees, that it would apply to retirees. It would hopefully help to bring that figure down.
But
I think
can you address the PAYGO issue?
You know, they're doing it because they don't have an option. They also are doing it because, for some reason, state law allows them not to show that figure on their budget. They can show it as a zero, private business can't do that. So they can do it, but it's liability they're incurring, and they're going to have to pay at some point. So it shouldn't be there.
Okay. So pension unfunded liability.
Very disturbing. That's the highest figure that I've heard. I've heard anywhere from 50 to 150 million.
Well, the figure I gave you was the combined OPEB and pension.
Oh, okay. But it's you know, that's got to be addressed, and I think the employee is going to have to kick in more in terms of funding the pension plan. That's the only way we're going to try to get the budget balanced in the first place, so that we have extra funds to put into the retirement plan.
Okay. Gordon, you still there?
Yes, I am.
You want to take a crack at each of these? Healthcare?
You're asking me what my solutions are to each of those, or whether I support cuts, or what? What are you asking specifically?
Well, on healthcare, 100% funded healthcare currently, of all sorts of plans. What should be done?
And this is what I think was done. You're asking me to go in and operate where I don't know where the cancer is. Okay. What I'm going to tell you is everything's on the table. Health care and pension, everything should be on the table, okay? Because it's do need to be made. But let me ask you a question.
No. Gordon, we're trying to wrap this up.
Let's wrap it up.
Retiree health. Retiree health. PAYGO.
On the table.
Well, that's not the question with PAYGO. The question with PAYGO is a funding problem. What do you think about the district making PAYGO payments?
Do I support it or not? Were we able to afford it in the past? If yes, why can't we afford it now? What happened? That's my question. Would I support removing it? Yes.
Pension unfunded liability.
Okay, here's something you need to know about that. Does it need to be addressed? Yes. if we were to take and somehow magically had a check and could write it for the entire amount of the unfunded liability, and next year an actuarial was done, and they found that we were in had a shortage of, let's call it $3 million, guess what? We would then owe at that point $30 million. But the converse is not, if we pay them $80 million and come up flush, and the next year they find out, actually, we have a surplus of $30 million, will they give us back $30 million from that, with that pension fund? No, they will not. This is a little known fact. So the only sensible thing, because I don't believe it's the citizens' responsibility who are paying their fair share in the taxes, the property tax, which supports the district, the only logical thing from my standpoint is to pay the amounts that they say we owe, because they will amortize it, and pay the amounts that they say we owe every year until that point in time comes when an actuarial is done and shows that it's flush. At that day, the day takes 4 years, we're paying each year. After year 4, they come up and they take a snapshot, do an actuarial, and say, oh, guess what? And these are factors that could influence that fund. They say that the fund is flush and it has enough money. Guess what? We at that point in time no longer owe anything.
Gordon, let me ask you a quick question.
It's a very important fact.
Gordon.
But here's what, yes, sir.
Quick question. Do you think there's a possibility the unfunded liability could be paid off in 4 years?
You're not hearing my question. I say that you amortize it, you make payments. And do I think that the amount that the deficit, the unfunded liability, do I think that that amount could disappear in 4 years? Absolutely. And I'll tell you how. The real estate market and the values of homes are what generate the property taxes. The district's budget is generated from the property taxes. So when the houses are worth more, they sell for more. And every time a house is sold, there's more money generated that goes to the budget. And when the market's down and the housing's down, the houses are selling. They're using old numbers. And in the case of the tax assessor, they're even giving back people and lowering their assessment. So that hurts the district as far as how it collects the money. But the point that's very important to remember is every single year that number changes. Every time they do an actuarial, it changes. It's all based on where the people that are managing that retirement fund are investing the money. You got to ask yourself, how come youth working does it now? It has to do with the fact that they invested the money and what they're investing in and the returns they got on it. Now, you're saying, yes, it can disappear in 4 years. It disappears when everything gets back on track and the economy is rolling again. But if we paid it off tomorrow, they can come back next year and say, you owe.
Let me ask the people here. Do any of you agree with Gordon that it's likely or could be paid off in 4 years?
No.
There's no
You're
way.
taking me out of context, sir. I don't see how.
There's no way you can have $75 million come
Unfunded
out of the sky
liability is
in
a
4 years.
nebulous number. It is not a set number. It's based on the projected earnings and the projected demand for the use of the fund. People can retire at older ages. There's a lot of things that affect that. I don't think you understand what it is. It's a hard number. It's not like you spent $79,000 on a credit card and now you
Gordon?
$9,000.
Gordon?
Yes,
With
sir.
all due respect, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I understand it real well. I've been writing about it solid, nonstop, for 4 years. I don't want to get in a pissing match with you right now. But with all due respect, I'm going to cut you off.
That is, if we tell the firefighters or the district, if we slash too much, we no longer attract and retain the best that we can get. We no longer provide the services to the district because the people will move on to other jobs. If your boss came in and took away half the salary to another organization, so you got it's a fine line. We have to work with what we have. And if it to work, why doesn't it work now?
Okay. Final. I need to ask you, Gordon, and I need to ask Steve to discuss the familial relations and explain what they are and what problem you do or don't see them presenting. Starting with you, Steve.
Here's the Yeah.
Yeah. First, I'd like to just comment on your 4 years of work on pension liabilities. And just remind you that in 1985, the Dow Jones Industrial stood at 700 points. It crashed to 500. It was Black Monday. In 2000, the Dow Jones Industrial was 13,000. Today, it's still 13,000. So while the last 4 years, indeed the last 10 years, have not been kind to equity investors, as I have personal experience with, I can tell you that over time there are bull markets and there are bear markets. And the pension liability, the unfunded pension liability, represents the amount that the district has promised to pay its retirees for the rest of their lives, which means that that is either 40 years or 30 years or 20 years based on actuarial determinations of how long those people will live. Certainly that is a period of time that stretches well beyond 4 years. So between the 4 years you've done this and the 4 years to come, I would have to say that you picked probably a very good time to be interested in underfunded pension liabilities. And I'm not saying that it's going to come back. I'm not saying the stock market's going to be 26,000 or 56,000. I don't know. If I did, I would be invested in the stock market.
Okay, so Steve, describe.
But I'm just saying there are other possibilities than the dire possibilities, such as the Japanese taking over the United States and buying our whole country, or the Chinese being the #1 economic power in the world.
So are you saying it is?
Or the Dow Jones Industrial Average staying at 13,000.
So are you saying it is possible that the unfunded liability could go away in 4 years?
I am saying it's very unlikely that it will be gone in 4 years. I'm not saying it's impossible or possible because I don't know. And I don't think anybody knows. But I do believe that at some point between the gains in the stock market, which are, in my opinion, inevitable, and the concessions that obviously have to be made on the part of San Ramon Valley Fire employees, coupled with the increase in revenue that Gordon alluded to with the property values recovering from arguably the worst housing crisis in my life anyway, that there is another side to this story. Dan, I know you've really spent a lot of time and probably are due to win a Pulitzer Prize for your work on this. I have to say, I was very impressed. I really like the work you did in exposing this. But there is another side. There's two sides to every issue. And the other side of this issue is, well, yeah, they expected stock market gains like 1999, 2000, when the NASDAQ went from 1,500 to 5,000. It's still at 3,000.
Tell you what, you're a financial guy, right?
That's right.
Explain your understanding of what the unfunded liability means and what would have to happen to wipe it out in 4 years.
Well, when you deposit
them.
an amount into a pension account, in this case, and you expect to pay out an amount from that account over time, you will be able to do so with what you've got in it, what you will continue to contribute into it, and what it will earn over time. So when you do your end of year, end of quarter, end of decade, however often you do your assessment, you look at the balance, you say, well, if I earn 5% for the next 30 years, and people contribute X dollars for the next 30 years, I'm going to have $78 million. But if I calculate how much I owe all these retirees, that's $150 million.
What if I say...
I don't have $150 million. I only have $78 million.
What if
that is a shortfall, which we call an underfunded liability.
Steve, what if I said to you, how much they're going to contribute in the future has nothing to do with the unfunded liability?
Well, the unfunded liability is calculated at a point in time as of today.
Right.
So that is today's unfunded liability based on assumptions. Assumptions for growth, assumptions for contributions, and assumptions for payments.
Not assumptions.
Well, where will the account be? Oh, okay, I'll grant you that. It's just for the current account and not any additions for employees. So it would be just the growth in the account and the amount that you would owe for employees that they've already earned.
That's exactly right.
So they've earned $150 million, and you only have $75 million at the end of 20 years.
It's the difference between the present value of the future benefits and how much you currently have in assets.
That's right, and the present value is used to calculate the future value, and the future value is short by $75 million.
So
based on assumptions you make for calculating
to make up that unfunded liability in the next 4 years,
That's a number you stick with. I don't
Well,
believe
that was
that
the
it's
number.
going to be.
That was the number that Gordon actually put out.
I don't
You know what,
believe. I don't believe it'll be
That's not really
funded
fair
in
to
4
me
years.
because it's what you suggested. It could be 5, it could be 6, it could be 3, it could be anything. That you're not entertaining the fact that it could go the other way. Somehow you're stuck to this thing that can't go. That's not fair.
Okay, so tell you what, Gordon, can you address the issue that I put on the table having to do with your familial relations and whether or not you see it as a conflict, why we should or should not consider it a conflict?
Okay, I will tell you why.
Well, first of all,
My
describe...
familial relationships are this. My great-grandparents, maternal and paternal, settled into this valley. They built their homes, and followed by my grandparents, both sides, built their homes that grew up in and went to San Ramon High. I have aunts, uncles, great-aunts, great-uncles, my whole family.
I'm not interested in that, Gordon.
And as such, I have had an uncle not sitting on the board, but serve as a captain for San Ramon Fire. He's now retired. So it's in my interest as a citizen in the community that's paying taxes that this community provides the services to its citizens, and it takes care of those doing the public servants doing that job. That is my expectation. Do I see a conflict? No. This is what I see. I see an investment. I have something at stake here, and that is that my neighbors, my family, all get what we're paying for, and that people don't get on that board and run that district into the ground and run it upside down and spend money they don't have and put this thing into a deficit.
Gordon, which relatives of yours are on the executive board?
I'm sorry, what?
Which relatives of yours are on the executive board?
I have a cousin that works in the fire department. If he's on the executive board, then he would be it, because I have one current family member in San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District.
And is there a conflict there that you see?
There's no more conflict than Jennifer Price, who is the sister-in-law of the...
Well, we didn't like that either. We didn't like that either, Gordon. So we're really not talking about Jennifer right now. But
we're talking about near relatives, and by definition, a cousin is not a near relative. Look at it. Call the city. Call an attorney and find out. By definition, a cousin that works in the organization is not a near relative, and there's no even appearance of impropriety versus something like that.
Is said cousin Gordon? Gordon, is said cousin a first cousin, a second cousin? Can you describe for me, please?
He is a first cousin.
Thank you. And you don't feel, and you don't see and I understand you don't feel there's a legal conflict. Do you think there's an ethical conflict?
Not any more than Stamey being the former chairman of the board of a company run by the fire chief. No. Less. I see less conflict. I'll tell you what I see. I see somebody that wants to make sure that the right things happen at this fire district.
Okay.
I have a vested interest in this fire district doing well.
Fair enough.
The people it's supposed to protect.
Steve?
Dan, thank you for that question, actually, because so far the entire discussion has been around finances, something that I know a little bit about, obviously not as much as anybody else here, including yourself. But I do pride myself on being able to get and ask tough questions and trust but verify. My brother Michael Moen, my younger brother, he's a twin. We're one of 7 Moen boys from San Francisco. He and I, as well as my brother Dennis, who's a teacher at St. Mary's High School in Oakland, all live in Contra Costa County. Actually, Mike lives in Alameda County, to tell you the truth. Between my family, my 6 brothers, we all have families. We're all very busy with our lives. I probably see Mike 3 or 4 times a year.
And his relationship?
He is my brother.
He's your brother, and his job is?
He is the union president, a firefighter for, I I couldn't tell you, maybe 20 plus years.
And he is the local union president, correct?
That's right.
Okay, I'm just trying to make sure we're precise here, okay? And so that is perhaps a little closer relationship than Gordon's cousin.
I would have to say that my brothers and I are all very close.
Okay, so can you describe?
And as I was starting to say, we don't see each other all that much, maybe at Christmas and a few times a year, but we all feel very close. I have talked to Mike more recently, after I decided that I would throw my hat in the ring here. And I believe that there is the potential definitely the potential. I have 3 brothers who are attorneys. I have an uncle who's a judge. I do believe that there is a potential for some instances of which would cause me to recuse myself from any discussions involving something that would directly affect him.
Such as?
Well, such as compensation, anything that's going to affect his livelihood. My role would be to bring to the conversation a degree of understanding of finances and how all the components work together and what options are available when you're talking about negotiating with folks on who obviously have the impression that you're trying to rip them off. You know, you don't want to give that impression. You want to give them the impression that they're giving, you're giving, everybody is winning.
How many
so this is what I believe. In a case where Mike, my brother Mike, the union president, is directly affected by the decision, I have no question that I would recuse myself. If there was a question, if I had to be involved with a decision that might affect him either adversely or in a positive way, I would seek legal counsel to determine if there are repercussions that would require me to recuse myself. However, there are other issues besides this that come to the board, and that was my point. We talk about finances and pensions and compensation and deficits, but there's more to running an organization. I've run organizations before, and there's day-to-day interactions between different groups in the organizations. There's management, there's employees, there's conflicts. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, but that's not your job.
With 175
You don't deal with internal
employees.
conflicts.
I don't deal with internal conflicts, but when they're elevated to the point where someone has to deal with them, those are the issues that I won't recuse myself because that's not necessarily something that directly impacts my brother.
Okay,
and there are
Steve.
lots of issues like that. For example, if there was a contract that was going to be awarded to a software company to design and build a software package for the department, I would ask tough questions. Is this something that you can rent? You can lease a truck, you can lease software. You don't have to go out and buy it. Do we have to hire someone internally to do this, or can we hire someone externally to do this? There's lots of financial decisions, there's lots of personnel decisions, there's lots of management decisions that have to go before the board.
Steve,
Citizens
can you
come before the board and have
Can you help me
questions.
understand, are there any budget or compensation issues you can imagine that would not affect Mike?
There are, actually.
Can you name some?
Well, I could budget for any division within the department an amount for training. That may not actually be something that Mike's working on at that time. I may be allocating for someone to take a trip to Hawaii to go and learn about fire safety. I may be allocating money for someone in the department to write some software that they can go then offer to the public.
This seems de minimis in contrast to the bigger compensation questions.
Does that come up every day? Is that something the board discusses every day? Is the contract negotiation something that goes before the board every single time they meet?
Is probably
every
far
year?
and away, the compensation and the budget issues are probably far and away the most important decision.
And when that contract is negotiated and that is settled, then there's no business before the board?
There's plenty of business before the board.
And all that involves compensation?
Those are arguably some of the most important issues, are they not?
Dan, suppose they solve those issues before this board even meets, the new board even meets. Then will I have to recuse myself from every board meeting? No, I don't believe so.
You believe that budget problems are going to get resolved before you get there?
I could imagine that happening. They're overdue by 18 months.
You're what?
They're overdue by 18 months.
It's true.
It's an extremely long period of time. The state of California doesn't even go 18 months over.
Okay, anything else we need to be sure? Yes, sir.
I'd like to address Mr. Dankin's statement about the corporation that the chief and I are involved with. The truth of the matter is it's a nonprofit foundation. we receive, let me repeat that, we receive zero compensation as members of this nonprofit foundation. We're not employees, we're not stockholders. We work on grants. The grants are allocated 100% to the foundation, excluding there is no compensation whatsoever.
Okay. And just so we have clarity here, this foundation is for?
The foundation is called the Pulse Point Foundation, and it's the app that applies to smartphones to notify citizen heroes in the area of a CPR needed incident.
Do you want to address that, Gordon?
Yes, I would actually. Two
Okay.
things. One, the district has an attorney, and at every board meeting that attorney's present. And whenever an issue may be even close to being one that there would be a conflict, the attorney stops the meeting.
No, Gordon, my question is, did you want to...
No, that's the first thing, but specifically to what Mr. Daney just said, yes, I have one issue. And this is my issue. The very person that the board member is supposed to be the watchdog over, the boss of, if you will, the person representing the citizens to make sure that they achieve the right thing, and that is the fire chief, the manager of the district, is also, at the same time, the very person that has given Mr. Staney the power and authority of this great nonprofit. I'm sure no expense account or anything that comes along with that. And I'm being sarcastic here because this is, it has the appearance of impropriety more so than the fact that my cousin works for the fire department, which was never an issue for the 6 years that I sat on the board, and we came in with good budgets every year. We had a budget surplus, even through other economic crises such as the dot-com bust.
Anything else, folks?
No?
I just have a clarification.
Are you talking to me?
No, that'd be Steve talking to Dan. I have a clarification question for you, Dan, in that all of the issues before the board involve the budget, and that all issues with regard to the budget would involve my brother.
I'm sorry, what's your question?
Well, from the way you phrased that question, it seemed to me that you were implying that every issue before the board involves the budget, and every budget issue involves...
No, I was asking you to specify which budget issues you did not see, that you did see would not present a conflict.
And the issues that would create a conflict, conversely, would be matters of direct pay, contributions to whatever plans they have, and that is a contract that is negotiated with the board's negotiation representatives. So that is discussed between them, a decision is made, it's brought before the board, and the board says go back and work harder, or yeah, that's okay. That, once done, is done. That's done. That's a contract, that's done. There are other budget issues that come up, but once you have a contract with the union, I work for AT&T. We had union negotiations. They would close the shop down for months at a time while those negotiations took place. There were negotiators. They went to the board. The board decided whether or not it was an acceptable plan to the board. But it was never an ongoing, every time the board met, they talked about budgets and employee compensation type of world I lived in. And if that's the world that the board lives in, well, then there won't be much work for me to do. Because if all we talk about is Mike's take-home pay, then I think the board could use me because
would you agree that
there's more important things.
A little bit broader than just Mike's take-home pay?
I would guess you do.
I would, yes.
Yes, you would. And what would the conflict in your mind? You have a brother, I'm assuming.
Yes, I do.
And if you were in a similar situation, would you see yourself as a stand-up, moral and ethical person, or would you see yourself as doing anything you can to benefit your brother because he's your brother? I don't see myself caring much about Mike's day-to-day finances. It's important, sure, but mine are more important to me than his. So, it's not it's not like that's what I think about every day. I don't go to bed thinking, geez, how can I get Mike some more money? I mean, come on, do you? Does anybody? That could come up from time to time, I would expect, especially during contract negotiations. But I wouldn't expect it to be an ongoing festering sore with regard to board issues. I think the board has more to do than that. They have other responsibilities than just determining whether or not the firefighters get more money. I mean, that's just my opinion. I assume that you would at least concede that that's possible.
Oh, I would definitely agree that there's probably other issues other than the budget. And the
no, but that I wouldn't be, so, I mean, I'm a certified public accountant. I take, every 2 years I take ethics courses. It's in my blood. I'm an ethical person. If there was a conflict and I didn't know about it, there would be an attorney that I could consult to say, is this a conflict? I mean, I would not, you don't know me, I don't know you, I don't know anybody. But I do know myself, and I am a very ethical person. I would not see myself in the role of trying to advance my brother's bank account or personal finances at the risk of being unethical. I don't do that for my own family. I don't do it for my own business. I wouldn't do it for my own brother. I mean, I'd step in the middle of a brawl and break it up and pull him aside, but I wouldn't go rob a bank and put money in his account. It's just not part of my moral fiber. So that's just that's a clarification of what I believe is the underlying issue with me being related by blood to a member of the staff. With regard to having a relationship with a member of the management team, if you're in a board meeting with someone and you're the president and he's the chairman, and there's very successful businessmen, Dave Duffield just went public with Workday, and you're getting exposure to and meeting and becoming pals with all these powerful people, there might be an inclination on the part of some people to imagine that you would look the other way for that fire chief, because he, after all, got you this job, or you got him the job, or you're seeing him all the time. You see eye to eye, you talk, you're on the board. So I mean, and to Matt Dakin's point, I believe that ethical behavior is something that is personal to the individual, and something that is certainly possible to achieve, even if your brother happens to be someone who is the recipient of of some sort of benefit or detriment as a result of your decision. So I just wanted to clarify that for you, Dan. I know how hard you work on your
And I'd like to also make an apology. I've been very defensive, and the reason is because, like that Steve that's been talking, he pointed out that you seem to have this predisposed opinion that somehow this fact that there's a relation to some of the members that are running for this office, yet you're not interested in other relations, and your questions all revolve around the potential for abuse of a budget and salaries with regard to these firefighters is related to a relative. It touched a nerve for me, because myself, I'm a very moral person, and I'm going to tell you, I was asked to run for this position, not by my cousins, not by the union, but by people that aren't even my first, that work in the administration of this department, that said, there's something wrong here, you need to go in and fix it, because we know you to be of high moral character, and you will get in there and you will figure it out and you will fix it. And that's why I'm running.
Who are the firefighters? By the way, I meant to ask you guys.
Whoever gave you the information, whoever told you, oh, this person has a cousin or this person has a brother, whoever told you that is the person that truly is hiding something, because they are getting you to chase a red herring.
Gordon, who are the union? Which candidates is the union endorsed, by the way?
Which candidate what?
Has the union endorsed?
Which candidates have the union endorsed?
Yes.
They've endorsed me. I'm gonna guess Mullen, because he's an accountant, and they need somebody to do auditing of the books of the department, but I don't know the other candidates that the union's endorsing. And I've never met Steve Moen in my life. So never met. The only person I think I've met
They have
is
endorsed
Matt
those
Steve,
three?
and that's just because the picture is familiar to me.
As has the teachers.
Folks, thank you very much.
San Ramon Valley Teachers Association.
We very much appreciate everybody's time.